Looks like it's just taken a couple of minutes.
The chance to shape your future is here. Learn and connect with exciting new opportunities. Are you ready for the next step?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Emerging Tech Fest. I'm delighted this morning to welcome Paul Kemp from the Greater South East Energy Hub. Probably many of you will know I'm very passionate about our Innovation Exchange programme, and we've got some great challenges live at the moment. And if there's time at the end, I'll walk through a few more. But Paul has got some great challenges with regards to fleets and EVs, and he's going to discuss those with you today. There's a few people that should probably be watching in the hub, but we're allowing you into the session today. Just some etiquette that if you are in the session, please keep your camera on off and your mute on so that Paul can take us through his slides. Paul, I leave it to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louise. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. So yeah, thank you, Louise. Yeah, so my name's Paul Kemp, as Louise mentioned. I'm from the Greater South East Energy Hub. Just a very, very quick background to the Energy Hub for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We're one of 5 energy hubs across England, and we're funded by BEIS. Our whole remit is to accelerate the growth of local energy projects through working with local enterprise partnerships, local authorities and other public sector stakeholders to identify specific energy projects which are struggling to sort of move forward, and we basically help those projects to be able to get to an investment ready stage. We cover quite a large area of the Greater South East, so we've got all of East Anglia across to Northamptonshire and Oxfordshire, down to the north part of Hampshire, then across to Kent, then we've got London in the middle. So quite a large area with around 140 different local authorities within that area. So yeah, I'm just going to talk to you today about the Big Engine Decarbonisation Challenge that the Greater South East Energy Hub have been working with KTN to deliver. So yeah, in terms of a little bit of background to this challenge, as mentioned here, the carbon emissions from big engines has become a real commonly identified source of hard to treat emissions in public sector's net zero plans. And this is something that the Energy Hub have had increased in visibility of through the engagement of a wide range of public sector organisations that we're working with on energy projects, which includes, you know, the 140 or so local authorities in our patch. As a lot of you are aware, local authorities have committed to reach net zero carbon emissions between 2030 and 2050, some of them even more ambitious, looking at those before them, particularly with regards to their own estate and their own operations. And these targets include the operational vehicle fleets, such as waste collection, street cleaning and buses. Often commitment around this has been delayed as new technologies emerge, and there's a real need, which a lot of local authorities have got very hesitant to sort of move forward with anything too quickly, because they want to ensure that, you know, those the solutions that they put in place can be effectively future-proofed as new technology emerges, and therefore on the back of that to avoid any stranded assets, for want of a better phrase. Many local authorities have also flagged up the difficulty of creating a business case due to the high capital cost of replacement vehicles, especially when an existing fleet has got a remaining life cycle of, you know, a good few years. And the other sort of dimension to this as well is that many big engine vehicles are seasonal. So talking about vehicles such as gritters, for example, and then that creates another sort of dimension in terms of building an effective business case for zero carbon replacement for those. So yeah, we're working with KTN on an innovation exchange to try and identify novel solutions to this, both around the actual vehicles themselves and associated infrastructure. So yeah, just some figures really to give an idea of the size and scale of this challenge. As shown here in terms of looking at the number of buses and HGVs in operation compared to, the actual number of those which are zero carbon at the moment, you're talking, it's looking at less than 1% of these big engine vehicles currently being zero carbon. Many reasons for this are shown, and there's a lot of as listed there as well, and then there's a lot of other drivers really pushing a need for change, and such as climate emergency declarations, which particularly since 2019 there's been a huge number of local authorities that have declared climate emergencies, and they need to therefore act upon that. And obviously the zero emission plans, as I mentioned earlier, often which comes off the back of the climate emergencies. And then you've also got other initiatives as well within local authority areas, such as clean air zones. And at present as well, the other sort of aspect to this is that this has been looked on a sort of local authority by local authority basis, really, which there's been some really good sort of ideas and thinking coming from that. But what we sort of have identified as the Energy Hub through working with KTN and working with all these various local authority and other public sector stakeholders is that we really need a much more strategic approach for this if we're going to make a real impact, particularly within the given time frames, in order looking at the next 10 years, for example, to become net zero. So this is something really that we're hoping that this challenge is able to address. And again, just a little bit more context to the previous slide, really, in terms of current uptake of low emissions vehicles with big engines. As you can see, there's been a real huge increase in the last few years in the uptake of cars, but obviously for a lot of the other vehicles, which includes larger local heavy goods vehicles and buses and other large engine vehicles, although for some reason motorcycles is also included in that. The uptake has been very, very, very slow. So yeah, there's a real sort of need really to address this. So yeah, as mentioned, we've worked with KTN on an innovation exchange to address these challenges, and we've developed off the back of this 2 different challenge statements. These statements are looking at have been disseminated by KTN through an initial launch last month. I'll talk in slightly later in a bit more detail around the timescales, and what we're looking at is both solutions in terms of the engines themselves and the vehicles themselves, but we're also looking at the actual associated infrastructure with that as well, particularly not just looking at electric vehicle charging, but also looking at other technologies as well that are emerging and could become sort of more mainstream around this. So looking at hydrogen and biofuel, for example, as part of this. So that's the 2 separate challenge statements that have been sent out by KTN, which we're looking for responses on, for which, and again, I'll talk in a bit more detail as to progress so far, but we've received, a very good number of responses to this. So yes, to give an example, just to give an idea of the timescale. So as mentioned, we launched a competition last month in December, and there's a deadline for early to mid-February for responses to this. This will be then followed by a selection process to include looking at presentations and pitching by a lot of the key from the respondents to this challenge. And so, yes, looking at where have we got to so far with this? Well, so far, and these figures have probably been updated since then. So these are from a couple of weeks ago, because I've just got back from leave when I wrote this presentation. We've had 15 applications to the challenge statement 1 for the decarbonising of big engine challenge. So that's looking at a range of hydrogen, electric and sustainable fuel providers have all responded to that challenge. And there's also been at least 18 applications in the process for zero emission infrastructure challenge. And again, there's been a wide range of solutions to that have been suggested so far. We've had 26 local authorities, other public sector organisations as well included in that, who have expressed an interest in taking part in the challenge. So far, a lot of the local authority respondents have been from based on ones who have approached the hub directly for support, and where we've focused our initial engagement and the challenge around. But what we found is that as word of this challenge has got around more and more, we're actually finding that a lot more public sector organisations are approaching us directly for this, which have not flagged up a need for this so far. So we feel that, you know, that there's going to be some real traction in terms of numbers of public sector organisations who want to be part of this going forward. And as I mentioned, you know, we've got 140 or so of these in our patch as well. We're also working sort of in the background, talking to organisations such as the Energy Saving Trust and Cenex as well, particularly from the Energy Saving Trust perspective, in sort of engaging the local authorities they've engaged that have undertaken the Green Fleet Review already. So they've already got, you know, the start of a business case to really take this forward, you know, and hopefully this is something that the challenge will help them to be able to address. And so far, yeah, we've requested data in terms of these organisations that we've engaged on their existing fleet, so that we can start to understand, along with KTN, you know, what their specific requirements are, so that therefore, depending on the challenge respondents, we can also hopefully be able to match a specific solution to what those local authorities and other public sector organisations require. And yeah, just slightly, just to give some background here as to why we chose to work with KTN on this challenge. And a lot of the sort of drivers behind this, as listed here, are really around, you know, that actual access to the technical knowledge that we required, which KTN, you know, is able to give us access to, as well as actually understanding more about the market and who is actually out there that's able to provide these specific solutions. And really, you know, actually, because a lot of the solutions that are being requested are very specific to those local authorities, but also require a strategic approach. There's a real sort of need for looking at, you know, soft market testing and, you know, supplier engagement on a scale and through a method that KTN are very sort of well experienced in delivering. And yeah, just to sort of also give an overview of the Energy Hub's role within this, as well as, you know, setting the actual initial scene for the challenge through the engagement of the local authorities and public sector organisations that we've worked with. We really, yeah, this whole engagement piece really is to sort of ensure the pitch from the businesses who respond is aligned with the specific individual requirements of decarbonising the big engines. So we've kind of played a role in terms of looking at that whole facilitation piece. So we've worked, you know, so facilitated that kind of engagement with KTN, with the public sector organisations that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So this has included, you know, undertaking initial launch of this back in September, where we kind of presented to prospective respondees to the challenge, and also undertaking that engagement on a day-to-day basis as we take this forward with the public sector, with KTN, and also with any specific businesses that fall within our sort of contacts and our sort of day-to-day engagement as well, that we feel might be might want to take advantage of this challenge and providing a solution to that. And how we've approached this, well, really, you know, we've looked at undertaking, we do regular stakeholder bulletins to all the different public sector organisations and other technology providers in our contacts list. So, you know, we're sort of able to disseminate information on the challenge through there, through specific meetings that we have and one-to-one ad hoc conversations with those different contacts, and also through specific events as well. So as I mentioned, you know, we did a launch event for this back in September time, and, you know, as this progresses, you know, there's a lot of scope for us to undertake other events as well as part of this innovation exchange, particularly when a lot of the technology providers can start to come forward with specific solutions to this. So yeah, just to finish really, you know, what are the next steps? So, you know, as we see it at present, there are 3 different options. Under option 1, we're looking at here, you know, this is going to allow procuring organisations to then be able to potentially enter detailed procurement arrangements with, you know, directly with suppliers according to their own procurement rules. And then option 2, you're looking at enabling any procurement providers to be able to incorporate findings into their own purchasing arrangements. And then also looking at encouraging existing or new procurement providers to try and develop frameworks and solutions specific to the findings of this challenge. So yes, hopefully that gives a very quick overview in terms of, you know, this challenge that the Energy Hub have been working with KTN on so far, and yeah, just to sort of ask, if there's any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions posted for you, Paul. One around I can never say this word, micro-mobility charging infrastructure for e-cycles and e-scooters for when e-scooter UK trials are finished. Is that included?
That's a good question, actually. Yeah, so at the moment we've kind of just been focusing this on the bigger engines and things. So but this is obviously something, if there's an identified need for this, we'd definitely be interested in having a follow-up discussion, specifically around that, if there's any key initiatives around that, because I know there's a lot of different trials and things taking place around that. It's something, to be honest, we've not had any direct involvement or request for support around, but yeah, we definitely, if there's any scope for the Energy Hub to support that in any way, we'd definitely be interested in having a conversation about that.
Okay, so whoever posted that, if you want to get in touch with Paul, did you give your email address, Paul?
Actually, that's a good point. I did, but it's paul.kemp@energyhub.org.uk, and if that can be disseminated as well. I just realised that it wasn't mentioned on the presentation, so just for that.
And then there's a comment, I'm assuming this is from Brunel University, we know well.
Yeah.
It's working with a company that has developed a retrofit technology using dual fuels, LNG, hydrogen, hydrous ethanol, methanol, that reduces emissions by 60%, fuel savings by 40%. Is this in scope?
Yeah, I think that sounds really interesting, actually, because one of the things around this, as well as I mentioned in the presentation, was that we're looking at vehicles also. So it's not just around purchasing new vehicles on this. A lot of vehicle fleets in the public sector at the moment have got, a continued life of probably, a good 10 years or so in some cases. So, and we know that, there's not really going to be an initial need to, or the actual budgets or other sort of drivers to be able to replace those vehicles immediately, despite any carbon targets. So if it proves more cost effective to be able to retrofit those vehicles to enable, significantly reduced and potentially zero emissions, then yeah, absolutely, we're looking at real innovative challenges around that to be able to address those points.
Okay.
Hi there. Can I do a verbal one? It's Andy here. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, just really trying to understand what the selection criteria are for the solutions that are being proposed. So, is it just about the benefits in terms of carbon reduction, that sort of thing, or is it about other benefits? For example, supply chain development, jobs, retention of jobs, that sort of thing. And also, you mentioned in terms of the options, it could be one organisation, it could be a consortium. Is that important? Is a consortium important? Different organisational involvement? So yeah, trying to understand better what makes a good submission, please.
Yeah, well, certainly in terms of the points that you raised as well, yeah, obviously our main drivers as the Energy Hub in terms of how we report into BEIS is very much around, carbon savings and things. However, we work very closely. In fact, we're governed by the 11 different local enterprise partnerships that cover the Greater South East. And, we work very closely with them, and a lot of their work is focused around, the whole sort of economic growth, job retention and that side of things, and particularly looking at the opportunities for this post-COVID. So yeah, we're definitely, looking at this in terms of the bigger picture as well as, just the carbon savings. And, if anything can help to, grow and develop the supply chain around this, then, that's even better really. So yeah, we're looking at the sort of wider and much bigger picture around that as well. But yeah, in terms of, kind of specific submissions, and again, Louise, you might be able to sort of comment on this as well from KTN's previous experience around this. We're sort of looking at, from my perspective, because this is something that, we've not done as much before, we've not got, to be honest, we've not got anything specifically in mind in terms of, the best way to submit to this. But, we just want to, as long as it's a solution that meets the needs in terms of, looking at that, is scalable, is replicable, and can be, sort of disseminated across, if it's successful across, the much wider, not just the Greater South East Energy Hub area, but, with all the other 4 energy hubs as well, who we work very closely with.
Okay, thank you.
I just noticed as well, there's another question there. It just mentions the technology Brunel University has developed will need resource to deploy. As part of this challenge, is there funding attached to it, or will local authorities provide resources to implement the technology? So again, this is something, until we know a bit more about, what's actually being provided, because, some local, because at the moment, where as the Energy Hub, we're looking at sort of solutions as well from a financial perspective, in terms of driving forward a lot of carbon saving measures, because one of the big challenges that we've identified, not just with specific to this specific KTN challenge, but across all the different energy projects that we're supporting, is that there was a big financial barrier to actually getting a lot of these projects to the investment ready state. So we're considering a wide range of innovative solutions around that. So if there is a really strong viable solution that's identified on the back of this, then we're very keen to work with the local authorities, to work with the technology providers and others, and KTN, to try and identify ways to be able to implement and deploy this.
There's another question. Can a single application contain more than one solution proposal, such as EV and hydrogen? And can one organisation make more than one application? I'll answer the second part. Yes, you can apply if you've got different innovations that are relevant to the challenge, or any of the challenges we have live at the moment. And we do see sometimes 2 or 3 different approaches from organisations. It makes it simpler to review them than trying to put 3 different ideas down in one application. I'm not telling you to bombard us with 10 different ones, but if you think you've got 2 or 3 that are relevant for these guys to consider, by all means submit more than one. And I'll let you answer the I guess the single application contain more than one solution part, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I personally, I don't see any reason as to why it can't, because I think we've got, as I mentioned, there's 26 different local authorities that have expressed interest in this challenge so far, the number of which have already provided data, and the requirements for each of the local authorities is going to be different. Just to give you an example of that, we've got one local authority, for example, they're just outside London, so a lot of their area that they operate in is predominantly urban. But then we've got another local authority in a much more rural area, which has got they've got so when you're looking at refuse trucks, for example, the requirements of those vehicles in each different local authority area is going to be very different in terms of their duty cycles and mileage, and also the actual gradients in which they have to in the rural area it's much more hillier, in the urban area it's much more flatter. So the actual specific requirements that have been stipulated by both those local authorities is very different. So they are going to be, it's not, we don't expect for a second any like one size fits all solution to this. It is going to be specific to each of the different local authorities, and also linking to existing sort of infrastructure as well around that, and particularly where you've got more than one local authority, particularly neighbouring authorities that might want to join together in terms of coming up in terms of identifying the solution for this.
It's Andy here again. Just a question, just based on what you said in terms of multiple authorities and providing different requirements. Is there more detail available in terms of what those differing requirements are, different duty cycles, that sort of thing, so we can tailor our response to meet some or potentially all of those different needs?
Yeah, we're requesting some of the information from the local authorities on this at the moment. So we've already got some of that information through on them. So yeah, we're looking to sort of compile all of that, because obviously it's all coming through in different formats. But obviously, yeah, I agree. It would be useful for you to be able to sort of get an idea of what is out there and what's required. So I think once we get all that information through, that's something that can potentially be shared. Yeah.
Hi. Yes, sorry. Yeah, if it's okay to actually do a verbal question as well. So just based on what Andy said, I guess from what I was understanding in terms of the description of the innovation exchange, was that if we are successful at the application stage and we move on to the presentation stage, then I'm guessing there will be an opportunity to engage further with the KTN and the Greater Southeast Energy Hub to understand a bit more about the particular sites with a bit more detail for us to tailor our presentation towards that, because the initial application, which is due by the 11th of February, is quite short and quite high level, right? So I'm guessing you are expecting a lot more detail at the next stage of the presentation, and that's when you'll be able to share that information. Is that right?
Do you want me to take that, Paul?
I was going to say, yeah, because you might just from previous, but if there's anything.
Yeah, so at this stage, I would say a really good idea. There's only 3 questions that you have to address within the IX platform. What is your idea? So what is the basis of what you're proposing to the Energy Hubs Challenge? What TRL level are you at? And what kind of IP and protection do you have? And you can submit an appendix, you can attach things, but I always guide people that don't put a sales brochure in that's got 1,000 pages of what your products are. An attachment should really be at the crux of what your proposition is. But if you've got things that are sensitive that you don't want to share at this stage, don't share them in that bit. This is just ideation, just to kind of attract your innovation to be pitched properly in the presentation stage, which is the next stage to the Energy Hub. Yeah,
but then as I was saying, then at the presentation stage is when you want to see a bit more detail. So we would get a data, will we get a lot more information about the particular site so that we could tailor our solutions and presentation towards that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that'd be really useful, because obviously, yeah, we want to try obviously make it as easy, as straightforward as possible as well for the respondents for this, in terms of making sure that because it's in both our interests for you to be able to provide a solution that meets the needs of what the Energy Hub have, and in particular the individual public sector organisations we're working with.
Thanks, so Paul. Right, we've had loads of questions coming through the hub directly now, so yeah. We work our way through these, Paul. So the first one I can see is the end-to-end solution that incorporates both fuel production as well as vehicle decarbonisation in scope.
So which one's that? So because I can't see the ones at the top for some bizarre reason.
It's an end-to-end solution that incorporates both fuel production via local authority farms, for example, as well as vehicle decarbonisation in scope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it will be great, if there is something around that can be looked at in terms of, because some local authorities are quite keen to be able to identify, where they can sort of have more direct control of, of that. And particularly when you're looking at technologies like hydrogen, for example, that's one of the sort of issues there in terms of the kind of supply and distribution. So yeah, we're definitely interested in looking at those kind of wider solutions there, where we can identify whether that be through specific charging hubs or transport energy hubs in the sort of longer term around that. So yeah, definitely.
Is there an ambition to be better than carbon neutral using captured fugitive methane over feedstocks reliant biomethane?
It's not something that we've kind of got into much detail at the moment, to be honest. But obviously, with information like that, that's obviously something that if there is any solution specifically around that can be better than carbon neutral, then yeah, absolutely, we'd definitely be willing to consider that.
Great.
I guess there's one I think just at the top about any. Just disclosing the name of any of the local authorities that have expressed interest in this. That's something I'll just need to come back to you on. I know there's 1 or 2 that have mentioned that they don't want any details to be shared at the moment, whereas there's others that might be open for that information. So I can ask that question and see if there's any that would be prepared to share their interest in this.
There's a question around individual companies or consortia, or with the Energy Hub connect us with relevant partners. I'll answer that as we have in the past had solo entries for lots of the Innovation Exchange, and we have seen consortia approaches. So if you have a consortia and that's the best solution for the challenges posed by Paul, bring a consortia approach. If you feel you're missing an element and we see that behind the scenes that you might be good in this area and we've got another one that is good in another area, we're happy to make that well, not say assumption, but those links to make your application stronger. But don't be frightened of a consortia approach if that's the fit for your solution. How should we engage with the Energy Hub to introduce our innovation and assess if it's fit with your innovation portfolio? Should we just email Paul in the first instance, James at Allotrope?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if you want to just send me any information on this, if you really keep, yeah, if you just want to understand a bit more about that, yeah, more than happy for you to contact me around that, just to see, because it might be that, you know, there's also other areas, you know, for some of the future challenges and other things that we do. So yeah, more than happy for you to contact me around that.
And I know James at Allotrope, so I can connect him to you directly, Paul.
Brilliant.
There's a question around TRL levels, and would a TRL between 4 and 5 be eligible to apply?
The TRL, what's the?
So this is technology readiness level. So,
oh, right, okay, yeah.
I mean, I can handle it a little bit, I guess, as long as there is a commercialized route. So if it's something that's TRL 4 that's going to take 10 years to get off the ground, then I would say that it's probably a bit too slow a burn. But if you think you can take technology readiness 4 very rapidly up to commercial product, then I don't see why it's not out of scope.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, just to kind of add to that then, yeah, you know, we're looking at sort of, yeah, new innovative solutions as well. And obviously that's a lot of the, yeah, as I mentioned in the presentation, one of the barriers there for a lot of local authorities to be able to find effective solutions to this has been around that kind of readiness level of a lot of the technologies. And they want to really avoid any stranded assets going forward. So they want to make sure that, you know, whatever is implemented can be effectively future-proofed.
Great. And what constitutes a large engine for this challenge?
Well, there's no specific. I think we're looking at, you know, as I mentioned, just to sort of give an example of things, you know, like buses, refuse lorries, maintenance vehicles, road sweepers, gritters, and that sort of vehicle. So we've got, you know, I think what we're sort of excluding from this at this stage is, you know, like cars, for example, but, you know, I think anything else, you know, beyond that, particularly, like say, in terms of the bigger engines, falls more in scope. And this is just based on, you know, the requests that we've had from local authorities so far, and the type of vehicles they're looking at, as I mentioned, are the refuse vehicles, their maintenance fleet, their yeah, road sweepers, and that sort of thing. We've also had some requests as well looking at buses as well.
There's a question around associated cost included in the submission. Would this help in terms of scoring? I mean, I answered that from experience with IX. Probably at this stage, it's probably too early. But if you're talking with millions of pounds in terms of what you're trying to deliver, it might be winced at a little bit. I would say probably more likely for the next stage where you're pitching ideas, some costs would be more beneficial. Paul, I don't know your.
So what was that? Is that in relation to the cost?
I guess the tech, yeah.
Yeah, because I think obviously, yeah, the more detail you kind of got around this, the better. Because I think, as I said, you know, we're trying to sort of understand more from our perspective as a, you know, as the Energy Hub, we're working with the local authorities, you know, what is achievable from a cost perspective. But then, you know, as I said, we're also working to identify potential, you know, to overcome the barriers around, you know, finance. It's, you know, often it's preventing, you know, a lot of different wide range of engine projects getting taken to that investment ready stage. So yeah, the more sort of understanding we've got around, you know, what the costs of this are, the better. Because what we're also looking at, as I mentioned, is, you know, stuff that is you know, replicable and scalable. And obviously if it's done at scale, you know, those costs might be, you know, significantly less. So yeah, you know, we're definitely interested in understanding more about that.
Great. And then there's a question around plans to extend the deadline if you are still requesting information from the public authorities. I'm assuming that means extending the deadline of the submissions.
For the so yeah, we've got that 11th of February deadline at the moment. So yeah, we're getting, like I said, we are getting increasing information from local authorities. So you know, if you know, if that's what we're working to at the moment. But obviously, you know, if there's any sort of, if we find it that, you know, there is more information, more time required, that's something I guess that we can, you know, discuss with KTN about that, because we're also conscious of your, you know, deadlines as well that you're working to. So we're kind of working on that basis at the moment of the 11th of February. But obviously, given the fact that, you know, due to COVID and other things that might, you know, be causing delays, yeah, in terms of flexibility around that.
And then Andy's asked a question about who's judging the submissions, and is it owned by the South East Energy Hub? Is it BEIS? Is it the LEPs? Is it all others? The process generally works by when the submissions are finished, they're assessed. The Energy Hub will deem the ones that they think are the most are the relevant to solve the challenges here and now, I guess is the best way of defining it. And those would be invited to panel session. So ultimately it's the Energy Hub and the local authorities that would be saying out these solutions are the ones that we think are really good fit for now. It's not to say that it's game over for everyone else. I think given that there are other public bodies engaged within this, it's a huge agenda. So I think there's lots of opportunities beyond that. And then someone else has written, our proposition is around the use of HVO as a drop-in fuel in lieu, I can never say that word, of diesel. This will feature the importance of fuel price and availability and is business sensitive. Sharing price information may require an NDA to protect IP. Is this okay? Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, you know, because we're you know conscious that there's going to be a lot of sensitivities around this, particularly with respondents that I've got something specific that, you know, they don't want to share too much information on at this stage, just, you know, because of commercial sensitivities. And as I said, on the opposite side, you've got local authorities who also are, you know, sensitive about disclosing, you know, what their requirements are. So yeah, you know, anything that's sent through, if it needs to be treated with, you know, that degree of confidentiality, then we can, you know, sort of discuss that. We certainly won't share anything across, you know, the board without, you know, without anyone's prior consent.
I would say in terms of your submission, I would keep that detail back until you go into the pitch session. If you were selected
yes,
for
that might be, yeah, I'd agree with that actually.
Andy's written, to assess appropriateness of proposed solutions, what level of funding is available? Pounds, millions, tens of millions? Answers on the post.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, we've not got any, you know, specific funding that's available for this in terms of taking it forward. However, the whole idea is that, you know, if we kind of demonstrate, you know, a really effective business case for this, dependent on what the solutions are, you know, we've then, you know, we're in a good position as the Energy Hub then to be able to feed that information back to, you know, back to the government, to then be able to sort of identify, you know, there's a real need for this here. This is what the solutions are. This is what, you know, the value of that is, and this is what the local authorities require in, you know, in line with actually achieving their net zero targets. So, you know, it just helps to really sort of, you know, build that business case and let, you know, the government know that this is what, you know, this is a real sort of opportunity here for this. And then this also links into the, you know, the wider issues that we talked about earlier in terms of, you know, the wider, you know, supply chain development, job growth, and other things, particularly in terms of any post-COVID economic recovery.
Great. The Energy Saving Trust and Cenex, will they have some sort of role within this initiative?
Well, so far, as I mentioned, yeah, we've just been having discussions with both organisations, really. You know, we've not sort of engaged them directly in this initiative. But as I mentioned, you know, with regards to the Energy Saving Trust, you know, they've already undertaken a lot of green fleet reviews with a number of these public sector organisations. So, you know, from initial discussions we've had, you know, we're hoping that, you know, a lot of this work can help, you know, dovetail into that work that's already been undertaken by the Energy Saving Trust. And I know, you know, Cenex as well, they kind of working, you know, with KTN anyway, in terms of, you know, wider range of other initiatives. So, you know, we're kind of, you know, we've got that dialogue with them. I think that's all I'd say at this stage. And, you know, depending what comes out of the challenge, then, you know, that will be taken, you know, forward appropriately.
There's a question around how many companies will be selected for the second round. That is a huge variable thing that we find as kind of the gateway to getting innovators in front of challenge holders. It depends on the solutions that are offered. If there are lots that are relevant, the Energy Hub will select as many as they think that might actually have a remit to solve some of the local authority challenges. So it could be that nobody's relevant, not that we've ever had that, or it could be that 20 if time and local authority interest allows.
Yeah.
We are currently working with a number of potentially private-owned companies, Bus Tour, e.g. Bus Tour, who are looking at tackling the same issues. Is there an opportunity to introduce these parties to take part in this programme, or is it only for local authorities?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually, because yeah, we've had a similar sort of question from local authorities, because one of the things that's been flagged up by a number of the authorities that we've engaged with is that a lot of their fleet is subcontracted anyway. So, you know, it's actually being managed by, you know, a third-party private sector organisation, often at scale, because they are some working and providing that kind of wider fleet solutions to a number of local authorities. So, yeah, we've already engaged with some of these organisations around that. So, yeah, so it's certainly not to, you know, discount that, particularly where there is a link with these organisations and the public sector as well.
Thank you. Apologies for the dog interruption there. Do we need to partner with local authorities or simply propose solutions that the local authorities will express their interest in?
Well, I think at this stage, and yeah, again, Louise, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but yeah, you know, what we're just looking at is, you know, for the solutions to begin with, and then depending what those solutions are, we can then sort of discuss the appropriate way to try and take those forward. And as I mentioned in the presentation, you know, the way that we see it at the moment, there's 3 potential options that will, you know, that we envisage at this stage to be able to look at once this, you know, once this challenge is responded to, and then that will, you know, be, and that's entirely dependent on the responses that we get to this. So, you know, at this stage, you know, we're not asking anyone to partner with anyone or anything like that, but especially because, you know, we've still not got that sort of full visibility from the local authorities that, you know, they want everyone to know specifically about what their solutions are in each area at this stage. So, but we're certainly, one thing I will say about local authorities, the ones that we've engaged in this, we've made it very clear that, you know, it's going to be local authority, not just local authorities, but other public sector organisations that are serious about finding a solution to decarbonising their big engine vehicle fleets and, yeah, associated infrastructure around that. So, you know, we're sort of making sure that we're engaging those authorities that, you know, are serious about this. And I think the fact that, you know, they're able to send us data and information is quite a good indication and a good benchmark to show that, you know, to actually get all that information together, you know, there is some level of commitment there.
Brilliant, thank you. And the last question is to me, how do we get your contact details? Well, I think if the questions have dried up after being absolutely bombarded with questions for Paul, I'm going to run through a whistle-stop tour of some other challenges that we've got, which might kind of help define some of the process involved in this particularly. So I'm just going to share my screen and rapidly go through my slides, because I really do speak quick, as most who know me will vouch for. So hello, I'm Louise Jones. I sit within the energy team at the KTN, and most of my day job entails running challenges through our Innovation Exchange, which is how this came about with Paul and the Greater South East Energy Hub. Just a shameless plug for what the KTN is. Our role really is to connect innovators with new partners, which is really relevant to things we're doing with the Innovation Exchange programme. And everything we do is for positive change. So we shouldn't really be making connections unless there's some positive outcome. We have lots of experts like myself in different areas of the KTN, and everything we do is about kind of connecting people. So we would say we have powerful connections. We have a huge network of contacts at our fingertips, and we believe that we are future shaping. So helping to identify things such as net zero potential opportunities for the future are big in our agenda. And the biggest thing is our people. We have about 200 people, probably about 150 doing a similar role to me in a variety of sectors that are deemed as of benefit to UK PLC. So I sit within the Clean Energy and Infrastructure team. And ultimately we've 3 areas of focus, but I won't go through too much detail of this, but ultimately clean, accessible and secure energy, and ultimately the supply and the systems underneath that. A lot of focus on digital and how we look at smart and resilient and sustaining kind of the community. So I'm doing an awful lot in local community work, and have a session tomorrow on local community energy. And we have 3 innovation networks, formerly SIGs, that are relevant to probably some people on this call. So if you are interested in exploring these more, have a look on the link at the bottom there. And then this is just showing a corporate brochure to show the areas that we're working in. And this is our team. So quite a diverse spread of people within the team. And the 3 there signposted, particularly from the Innovation Network's point of view, that might be relevant to some of the audience, but quite a plethora of people with expertise across the energy supply chain. And where we sit, Innovate UK ultimately have the funding and the purse, and we are in the Connect part of the Innovate UK family, alongside our friends Innovate Edge. Sorry, I haven't changed these slides yet. I'll probably get shot for that. And obviously the collaboration part of the Catapult. And then this just really shows what we do. And I try to tell my children what I do and they don't fully understand it, but a lot of it is around connecting such as events such as this, where there is funding. So obviously aware of things like Innovate UK funding and other funding opportunities, how we influence and support things like strategy, and some of the kind of things on intelligence and trends on marketing, and obviously navigating. So a lot of companies come our way and kind of need help navigating the innovation landscape. So IX is my thing, my joy. I really enjoy doing this. There's a link to the platform through the KTN hub there. And ultimately this came about from some work we did with the offshore wind sector that recognised there was no funding for this sector, but there was some great opportunities for innovators to engage beyond the supply chain of large organisations. So what could we do? So Innovation Exchange kind of formed as a way of helping challenge holders define things that maybe they haven't been able to solve within their current business needs, and reaching out to the innovators we have at our fingertips. And obviously that has morphed from offshore wind into the whole of the kind of energy supply chain, and not just large corporates such as the Siemens of the world. Local authorities such as the work we're doing with Paul are really, really relevant. And if we can help get innovators in front of people that have got real challenges, then why wouldn't we do that? And then this is just the kind of focus on our platform. Lots of challenges live at the minute. This is just a kind of high level of the process. So we try and make sure that the challenges are defined in a way that is easy for innovators to engage with. We're aware that sometimes large organisations can't necessarily define things beyond their sector. We struggle with nuclear. It's obviously sometimes with nuclear, it's obvious that it's a nuclear product that we're looking at, but we try and simplify the process so that we can reach more organisations than maybe the challenge holder would normally be aware of. We launch it typically for 4 to 6 weeks. There's then a selection process and relationship building, and then we give feedback. So either way, at the end of the process, we will say why, if you haven't been successful, the reasons why you weren't successful, and hopefully there's other opportunities that we can engage with you on moving forwards. Benefits for industry, we try and focus on UK content, but we do sometimes get innovations from overseas. And if they're the right solution for a company, why wouldn't you want to engage with them? It's quick and simple. It's time efficient for the challenge holder in that we do a lot of the legwork, and there's a potential for optional disclosure. So sometimes challenge holders don't want anybody to know that it's them behind the scenes. So we keep all of that anonymous until afterwards. Just a few case studies to show what we've done in the past. This was a challenge I worked on with ABP around emission reduction at ports. 13 applications into this challenge, 5 were invited to panel and 3 are currently going forward with trials, and 1 given a letter of support for funding. And then the other one we did was on kind of the vessel propulsions. Again, 15 applications, 5 to panel and 2 currently with trials, 1 also on a demo trial at no cost to the challenge owner. So sometimes we get innovations that don't actually require budget, but just want to prove that the technology works within a sector, which is lovely news for if you're a challenge holder and you don't have to pay out for somebody to try their technology on your site for nothing. And then this is, I guess, our poster boy, Adam Smith from Intrepid Minds. He bid into one of the offshore wind challenges, and he's negotiating contracts with an OEM worth 8 million, small innovative company that is now reaching beyond where he probably ever thought he would just by having a solution that he bid into over his lunch break. And this was one we did under COVID for the offshore wind sector. So this is kind of a kind of thing like a gas mask, but in a little cube that basically disinfect you as you walk under before you go onto vehicles. So I'm going to rattle through these. These are live challenges now. So if you want to have a look at these and enter these, some of these are closing within the next week or two. This one is around manhole covers. And ultimately the challenge owner needs a better fit for kind of assessing these non-intrusively. So how can they do that without sticking their hands down into the system each time? Control of climate on board of marine vessels. Again, this is wanted to do with condensers. So you're looking at kind of the corrosion side of things. and looking at kind of maintenance losses. So some relevance to probably people in the room here. Non-destructing of GRP marine vessels. I had to look up what GRP was because I didn't fully understand it, but the glass fibre reinforced plastics. So if you've got expertise in this, please have a look at this challenge. These are with NSG Pilkington, so these are ones I have a personal relationship with. Looking for measuring of contaminants, so really relevant to the sector's sensors community. Small trace materials really affect the productivity of glass as it goes through the glass production process. So if you've got experience in kind of in situ continuous monitoring of small contaminants, this challenge could really fit with you. And similarly, this is to do with glass melting. The furnaces using glass melting really get damaged in the process and have to be changed. They'd be interested in new materials or new ways of stopping this from happening, because this obviously affects the production effectivity of the process. These are yours, Paul, that I'm shamefully showing again for your behalf. So these are how they look on the portal. So these are the two that Paul has talked through a bit today. And the deadline is looming for those. So if you haven't already applied, get your processes in. And then we have 4 live with Artemis Technologies, a massive project, ultimately looking at a lot of it to do with battery design on this one. Big hydrofoil, really innovative project, but they've got 4 things that they're really looking for from us. So this one is kind of new battery solutions. This is collision avoidance and sensor technology. So how can you stop this from hitting things in the water that maybe it's not aware of until it's too late? I always think about the Titanic within this one. Ride height and actuation, so how it floats on the water, so some sensing system that could assist with that. And then the biofouling detection and avoidance. So I think there's probably some synergies with things like offshore wind, where you've got biofouling that really impacts on how streamlined that is going through the water. So really keen on technologies that could solve some of those challenges. We've done some international work of late. So this is a link with India and DIT. So we have, I think, 3 that are kind of relevant to implementing things within India. I'm not the expert in these, but the details are on these slides, and I will upload them on the platform, but you can have a look at the challenges directly. So this is kind of public spaces, and again, with considerations around COVID. This is around air pollution. So again, probably really relevant to the energy sector, and probably people online for this call. And then the waste management. So how can we get some of the UK-based waste management approaches into India? And then I think these are the last 2. So this is Severn Trent, looking at how they measure and communicate the benefits of nature-based flood prevention measures that really gets community buy-in. So a lot of approaches are brought forward that community really need to engage with, and you can't just put a flood solution in if the community doesn't understand why it's there. So really keen to see how Severn Trent can deliver on this one, and they've got Ofwat buy-in for this. And the last one, again from, I guess, a sensing detection, is the kind of lead supply. So lead supply pipes underneath the ground. Rather than having to dig them up, can we scan them above the ground and not go into people's homes to see where their pipes are? So again, another sort of sensing approach that would really benefit from innovative ideas. This is my contact details. I've put my colleague John on there, who leads on our innovation exchange across the KTN, but for that person that asked for my contact details, my email is up there. By all means, get in touch and have a look at the wealth of challenges that we've got. And that will do for me. Thank you. Nilam, no more questions?
No, I think you answered the last one, which was around how many companies will go into the second round, and is there a limit, and will there be viable solutions be given an opportunity to present? You kind of covered that in your presentation, so I think that's fine.
Great, thank you. There's no more questions from anybody. We think we can call it a close. Thank you so much for your time for this session. I hope you found that beneficial. If you've got any more questions for myself or Paul, by all means get in touch. We'll try and answer your questions directly for Paul's challenge, or if you've got any queries on the other challenges that I've presented this afternoon now. But if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank Paul for his time today, and for all of you for your questions. That was a real hammering of questions, really good questions there. And we'll let you go and enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks very much, really useful. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.